How is property divided between two spouses in a divorce in Ontario?
That's a really good question. A lot of people think, erroneously, that the way we deal with property in Ontario is we just divide everything equally. 50-50, we always hear. Well, I'm here to say that's absolutely not true. And any lawyer that tells you that is a lawyer to stay away from. We don't take the RSP and chop it in half and give each to each side. We don't take the pension and chop it in half and give it to each side. Obviously, if there's something that's in joint names, owned by the parties as joint tenants, each are entitled to half. But that's not how it works for all property. So how does property work? Well, in Ontario, and every province has their own rules, so you should check with a lawyer in your particular province. But in Ontario, we have something called equalization. What's equalization? Equalization is a fancy legal term for a money payment that one spouse pays to the other to make life equal. Well, how does it work? Well, the way it works is, a good way to think about it is we take a picture. And we take a picture in two different times in the parties' lives. The date of the marriage and the date of the separation. And what exactly are we taking a picture of? Well, the law says that we have to take a picture, so to speak, of what each person's net worth was. Net worth meaning assets minus liabilities. And we do this both at the date of marriage and the date of separation, which is also called the valuation date, by the way. We do it for both parties. Now, why do we do this? It's not a make-work project for lawyers, so why do we do it? We do it because the law says you have to look at the increase in the net worth of each party from marriage to separation. Now, if both parties wind up increasing their net worth the same amount of money from marriage to separation, it goes by increase in dollars, by the way, not by percentages, then neither of them owe anything to the other. Anything each of them has, stay with that person. If they have any debts, it stays with that person. And as I said, if there's anything in joint names, it has to be dealt with. So if there's a joint home, it has to be sold, or if the parties agree, there can be a buyout. Those cases where both parties increase the same amount of money from marriage to separation are pretty easy. My cases generally are not so simple. Usually I see big increases by both parties during the marriage, but one person at the end has increased more than the other, either because they have assets this person doesn't have, or they have the same amount of assets, but this person has more debt. And if that happens, what does the law say? Well, the law says that marriage is a partnership. And so any increase that one has over the other has to be shared. And the way it's shared is by this person paying the other a chunk of money. Now, a lot of people wonder how that chunk of money is paid. It can be paid by writing a check. It can be paid by rolling over from one spouse's RSP to the other spouse's RSP on a tax-free basis. Most often there's a house involved, and so if the house is in joint names, for example, each party getting half, from the one person's half who owes the equalization payment, he pays it to the other, and it's done through the house transfer. Now, I've simplified things a bit. Let me just leave you with two other concepts that are related to equalization: deductions and exclusions. Deductions are things that people own at the date of marriage. As I said, we're looking about the increase in your net worth from marriage to separation. So if you come into the marriage worth something, that is deducted, and therefore it's called deduction. It's deducted from what you own at separation. Anything from a car to an RSP to a house that you owned at the date of marriage. Be careful, however, if it's the house that you owned at date of marriage and it's the same house you have at separation and it's a matrimonial home, there could be trouble. But that's for another discussion. And the final thing is exclusions. People always ask, what are exclusions? Exclusions are things that we include at the date of separation, but then get factored out. So at the end of the day, they make no difference to the bottom line. They make no difference to an equalization payment. The law has listed a few of these and determined that there are things that should not be shared by the other spouse through equalization. And they're things like life insurance proceeds, gifts a party receives from a third person during the marriage, not from the other spouse, or inheritance, or a part of inheritance that you can trace. So if you have, for example, inherited $5,000 during the marriage and you used it to buy a piece of art that's worth $10,000 at the date of separation, the value of the art gets excluded for purposes of equalization. Before I leave, let me leave you with a concrete example of how equalization works in practice. Let's take a couple and say the man, for example, has increased his net worth by $100,000. Note, he could have been worth zero at marriage and increased to $100,000 at separation. Or at marriage, he could have been worth $1 million and increased to $1.1 million. The key is the growth, which is $100,000 in this example. Let's say the wife increases her net worth by $80,000. So the difference between them, you got it, is $20,000. That doesn't mean the equalization payment is $20,000. Otherwise, they'd be like this. The equalization payment, if you haven't figured it out already, is half, $10,000, which would bring the husband down to 90 and bring the wife up 10,000 to 90. Okay? That's called the equalization payment. So there you have it. Equalization payment in a nutshell. You've saved yourself 3 years of law school, and now you know how property division works in Ontario. Thank you so much for joining us.